The first time we played here, Adam left the stage right after we were done setting up to go pee, and took like 10 minutes. Yeah, hey Jake, go grab everybody so that Adam can go take a piss, and then you can just watch us fucking stand here.
I guess it's not our fault.
Yeah, oh well. I mean, we can turn them off. Not really. We can see what it looks like with them off. That's a lot more DIY. I love that.
Kind of like progressive. It's so little. Let's try the outline options. We do also.
Oh, it's just the thing. Yeah, we need that.
everybody's here. This is Awake But Still in Bed's first time in Des Moines, by the way, so we're super glad that we can get going on. A lot of you haven't seen us before, so I'm going to introduce the band really quick. Behind me on drums, as always, is Adam Hunter. Love you, Adam. To my left is Kian Fallon, holding it down on bass. Love you, Kian. My name is Rune. You know what I do. We're going to just keep plugging right along. Let me fuck with something down here really quick.
I'm gonna fuck with something.
Alright. This one's called Locust. got 2 more. And these 2 are as long as the entire rest of the set. This is the part where I would normally tell the Guinness joke, but apparently some of the members of the band think that y'all don't deserve it for some reason.
What? No, listen to this joke.
I'm not gonna tell it if only one of you says it. Hey, they want it, dude. I'll tell the short version.
Yeah.
So okay, this is really stupid. So there's this Irish guy, right? And every day after work, he goes to the same pub and he sits at the same stool and he orders a pint of Guinness and he drinks it before he heads home. So one day he heads into this pub and he plunks his money down on the counter and he says, "Give me a pint of Guinness." And the bartender looks at the money, looks at him, looks at the money, looks at him, and he says, "I can't give you a pint of Guinness, the bats will get you." Well, the Irish guy finds this rather odd. And so he goes to the next bar and does the same thing, plunks his money down and says, "Give me a pint of Guinness. I can't give you a pint of Guinness. The bats are going to get you." He goes to every bar in his town, plunks his money down on the counter, says the same thing, "Give me a pint of Guinness." Same thing happens every time. The bartender looks at the money, looks at him, looks at the money, looks at him, and says, "I can't give you a pint of Guinness. The bats are going to get you." Well, this guy, he travels all over the country, all over the world even, looking for a bar somewhere that's going to give him a pint of Guinness. Eventually this guy is in his 90s, right? And I gotta moderate my volume. This guy's in his 90s, right? He's at a bar in Vietnam. And he thinks, well, this is probably the last pint of Guinness I'm ever going to have the opportunity to drink. So I better make sure they give it to me. So he hobbles in with his walker and he sits down at the counter and says, "Look, buddy, I don't know you, you don't know me. But what I do know is that you're about to give me the best pint of Guinness I've ever had in my life." And he pumps his money down on the counter and he says, "Now give it to me." And the bartender looks at the money and looks at him and looks at the money and looks at him, and then he turns around and he actually starts pouring this guy a pint of Guinness after all this time. Thank God, right? And this guy thinks, "Oh, finally, I can die a happy man with my pint of Guinness in my hand." And the bartender turns around and gets the perfect pour, perfect pint of Guinness, sets it down on the counter, and the guy says, "This is going to taste so sweet." And he takes a sip of it, and then the fucking bats get him. We got one more. Really quick, give a big shout out, big round of applause for Bees Knees for opening up tonight. Give a big round of applause for Your Health for being on this bill and coming all the way from fucking Ohio. Give a big round of applause for Waitress Still There coming all the way from California. Give a big round of applause to Sophie who's at work right now. Give yourself a big round of applause. Or not. We're going on tour beginning of August. If you could help us out, that would be awesome. We got tour shirts that we're doing, like reserves on. Go look at our Instagram page. Go buy some merch. Support the bands. This last one is a sad song. It's called Sugar Song.